U.S. State Department approves nearly a $3 billion weapons sale to Israel. Egypt's President Sisi and UK Prime Minister Starmer emphasized the urgency of rebuilding Gaza without displacing residents. And President Trump describes the meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky as not good. It's 10 a.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. The U.S. State Department has approved the sale of bombs, demolition equipment and other weapons to Israel in a deal worth nearly $3 billion. The Pentagon confirmed that Congress was notified on an emergency basis regarding the sale, which includes 35,529 general-purpose bombs, 1,000 kilograms each, and 4,000 bunker-buster bombs of the same weight. Part of the shipment could come from U.S. immediate stockpiles. This marks the second time in a month that the Trump administration has declared an emergency to fast-track weapons sales to Israel. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer underscored the urgency of rebuilding Gaza without displacing its residents during a phone call between the two leaders. The Egyptian leader reaffirmed that the establishment of a Palestinian state along the pre-June 4th, 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital is the only guarantee for lasting peace in the region. The call also covered Egypt's efforts to enforce the ceasefire, facilitate detainee exchanges, and deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza residents. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres confirmed his participation in the extraordinary Arab summit on Gaza, scheduled for Tuesday in Cairo, Egypt. Guterres emphasized the need for sustainable reconstruction in Gaza and a political solution to the crisis. He also called for avoiding renewed hostilities, stressing that there should be no long-term Israeli presence in the Strip. Qatar has submitted a memorandum to the International Court of Justice regarding the legal obligations of Israel towards international organizations. The Qatari submission demands that Israel allow UN agencies to operate freely in the occupied territories and protect humanitarian facilities and workers. Qatar also called for lifting the Knesset's ban on UNRWA activities and ensuring unhindered humanitarian relief efforts. China has reiterated its firm support for the Palestinian people's struggle to restore their legitimate national rights, urging the international community to push for a comprehensive and lasting resolution to the conflict. Speaking at the 58th session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, China's permanent representative to the UN, Chan Zhu, expressed deep concern over the humanitarian crisis in the occupied Palestinian territories, particularly in Gaza. Chen emphasized that the two-state solution remains the only viable path to peace and reaffirmed that Gaza is an inalienable part of Palestinian land. He also stressed that post-conflict governance in Gaza must uphold Palestinian self-rule and rejected any forced displacement of its people. Hamas declared its full commitment to implementing all phases of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza and called on the international community to pressure Israel into honoring its obligations. Meanwhile, Israeli media cited a government source stating that Israel does not consider itself bound by the ceasefire agreement without a clear consensus on Gaza's future and the weakening of Hamas authority. Moving on to the United States, where President Donald Trump described his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as not good. Speaking to reporters in Washington, Trump stated that Zelensky must explicitly declare his willingness to negotiate a ceasefire. Zelensky had sought a White House meeting to secure continued U.S. support and dissuade Washington from aligning with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who ordered the incursion into Ukraine 3 years ago. However, U.S. President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance criticized Zelensky, accusing him of disrespect, underscoring how the shift in U.S. administration has weakened Kiev's efforts to sustain Western backing for its conflict with Russia. U.S. President Donald Trump has further added to reporters that Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who he clashed with at the White House earlier, did not look like a man who wanted peace.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up as strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death.
For his part, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky affirmed his respect for U.S. President Donald Trump and the American people in an interview with Fox News, following the tense confrontation between the two leaders at the White House earlier. When asked in the interview whether his relationship with President Trump could be repaired, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky affirmed, stating that it goes beyond just the presidency, emphasizing the historic ties and strong relationship between the two nations. The highly anticipated Oval Office meeting ended in disaster as Trump and Zelensky engaged in a heated exchange before the global media, clashing over the ongoing war with Russia. A White House meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance ended in heated clashes over the Russia-Ukraine war. Zelensky had traveled to Washington to finalize a proposed minerals deal and secure continued U.S. support against Russia. However, tensions escalated, leading to a public confrontation, and the deal remained unsigned.
In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt attributed the tense encounter between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Zelensky's refusal to acknowledge the reality of the war. Leavitt stated that Trump understands the American people are wary of funding the war in Ukraine and blamed Zelensky's hostile approach for derailing the rare minerals deal between the two nations. She emphasized that President Trump remains committed to peace, but warned that unless Zelensky shifts his stance, a peace deal with Russia may not be possible. Former Russian president and top security official Dmitry Medvedev praised what he called President Donald Trump's proper slapdown of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, but said it was not enough. Commenting on the tense White House exchange between Trump and Zelensky, Medvedev stressed the need for Washington to halt military aid to Ukraine, calling it a crucial step in reshaping the conflict.
Mr. President, we don't need that. Mr. President, I just wanted to ask.
We are staying in our country, staying strong. From the very beginning of the war, we've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks.
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
Cabinet.
You haven't been alone.
We
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave, but they had to use our military.
What about West?
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
You invited
gambling
the
with the
president
lives of
involved.
millions of people,
You think-
you're gambling with World War III.
What do you think
You're
about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's
with
backed
all
you
respect to you.
far more than a lot of people said
With
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
As part of the deal, or is that on the table at all?
No,
Mr. President,
we don't need that.
Mr. President.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese reaffirmed Canberra's unwavering support for Ukraine amid the Trump-Zelensky clash, stating that Australia sees Ukraine's fight as a defense of international law. Speaking to reporters in Sydney, Albanese emphasized that Australia remains firmly aligned with Kiev as the conflict continues. And now we move to the economic news of our news bulletin with Selma in our newsroom. Selma.
The World Bank is setting up a $1 billion fund to support Lebanon's reconstruction efforts, according to Finance Minister Yassin Jabir. The World Bank will provide an initial contribution of $250 million, while donor nations are expected to supply the remaining $750 million. UK property prices rose by nearly 4% in February, marking 6 consecutive months of growth. On a monthly basis, prices climbed 0.4%, while in the second half of 2023, property values surged 14% compared to the same period the previous year, according to market data. European Union harmonized data released by France Statistics Authority has reported that French inflation rate fell sharply to 0.9% in February, its lowest level since February 2021. The drop from 1.8% in January was driven by falling energy prices and slower service sector inflation, and came in well below economists' expectations of 1.5%. The decline marks the first time since September that annual inflation has fallen in France and keeps it below the European Central Bank's 2% target for the sixth consecutive month. Economists attribute the cooling inflation to lower regulated electricity prices and a broader trend of disinflation. European business leaders have warned that new tariffs threatened by U.S. President Donald Trump on European exports could harm both economies, while placing a greater financial burden on American consumers. Trump recently threatened to impose 25% tariffs on European Union imports, claiming the 27-nation bloc was designed to screw the United States. In response, the European Union vowed to take firm and immediate action against what it calls unjustified trade barriers. European Commission spokesman Olaf Gill confirmed that high-level discussions are ongoing between the United States and the European Union officials to address the dispute. Meanwhile, reports suggest that the European Union is preparing retaliatory measures with a list of targeted products similar to those included in the 2018 trade dispute over Trump's tariffs on European aluminium and steel already in place. China's manufacturing sector returned to expansion in February, with the Purchasing Managers' Index rising to 50.2, up from 49.1 in January, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. A PMI reading above 50 signals growth, while below 50 indicates contraction. The increase was driven by rising market demand as businesses resumed operations following the Spring Festival holiday. The new orders sub-index climbed to 51.1, up 1.9 percentage points from the previous month. Demand for high-tech products and consumer goods was further fueled by government-led initiatives, including consumer trade-in programs, large-scale equipment upgrades, and policies supporting emerging industries like artificial intelligence. Bitcoin plunged to its lowest level in over 3 months, driven by uncertainty surrounding President Donald Trump's trade policies and the United States' stance on cryptocurrency regulation. The leading cryptocurrency dropped over 5% to $79,666, its lowest since November 11. The crypto market also suffered its largest ever monthly loss, shedding over $860 billion in February, with Bitcoin accounting for more than half of the losses. Now, for more news and updates from around the world, we go back to Hani in our studio.
Thank you, Selma. South Korea marked the 106th anniversary of the March 1st independence movement in the absence of President Yoon Suk-yeol, who awaits a constitutional court ruling on his impeachment trial. At the official ceremony, acting President Choi Sang-mok called for national unity to tackle both domestic and international challenges. He also expressed hope that South Korea and Japan could move beyond historical grievances and strengthen ties to usher in a new era of cooperation. Under Yoon's conservative administration, Seoul has pursued closer relations with Tokyo amid China's expanding influence and North Korea's growing missile and nuclear threats. Protests erupted across Greece as demonstrators marked the second anniversary of the country's deadliest train crash, which killed 57 people in 2023. Clashes broke out outside Parliament, where protesters defied police, tear gas and barricades, vowing to continue their fight for justice. As night fell, security forces moved in, using tear gas to disperse crowds. Earlier in the day, violent confrontations erupted as demonstrators hurled petrol bombs and set fire to trash cans in Athens, while hundreds of thousands joined a nationwide strike demanding accountability for the disaster. The 2023 crash, in which a passenger train carrying students collided with a freight train, has become a symbol of Greece's deteriorating infrastructure, fueling ongoing public outrage over what many see as years of government neglect. Mass protests continue to sweep Serbia, with demonstrators gathering in the southern city of Nice, ahead of larger demonstrations planned in the coming days. The student-led movement, which began in November, was sparked by the collapse of a canopy at the newly renovated train station, killing 15 people in Novi Sad. Public outrage has grown, with many Serbians blaming government corruption for the tragedy, an accusation the government denies. Protesters arrived Cyclone Garance battered the French overseas territory of La Réunion, leaving one person dead and two missing, according to the local authorities. The storm made landfall especially in the Western Highlands, according to Prefect Patrice Latran. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. The U.S. State Department approves nearly a $3 billion weapons sale to Israel. Egypt's President Sisi and UK Prime Minister Starmer emphasized the urgency of rebuilding Gaza without displacing residents. And President Trump describes meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky as not good. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.